Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. So today I've got something truly hideous for you. It's a full review of the T-103. This is a Tier 8 Soviet premium tank destroyer that is currently available in the premium shop on the Russian server, and I guess will be arriving on EU and NA shortly. Today, I'm going to let you know everything about a tank that truly only a mother could love, so you can see if it's maybe a vehicle that you would be interested in picking up, or more importantly, how to take them out effectively when they reach the battlefield soon. So before we get stuck into some gameplay, let's compare the T-103 to the Su-130 PM, the Scorpion G, and the ISU-152. And the reason why I'm comparing it to the Su-130 PM and the Scorpion G is that this tank has a fully traversable turret, which, as you know, provides tank destroyers with a lot of flexibility if they have the luxury of having one. So immediately we notice the damage per minute of this vehicle is right in the middle of the Su-130 PM and the Scorpion, but it has a great standard penetration of 258, which is only slightly behind the ISU-152. The gun caliber is large at 130, but unlike the Su-130 PM, which has the same caliber gun, it doesn't have 520 alpha damage, it has 440, which is very low for a large caliber gun like that. I was almost certain this was going to be having 490. Now this is both good and bad for the tank, as it has a slightly better damage per minute of the Su-130 and much lower alpha damage. That means that you can divide your shells more equally amongst your opponents or finish off low health tanks without feeling like you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage and wasting the alpha damage. However, on the other hand, when it comes to playing that tank destroyer where you want to hit really hard and out-trade your opponents, yeah, this tank can fall behind even some equal tier heavies. One thing that really sucks about this vehicle is the shell velocity, 870 on its standard rounds, and it's got the same shell velocity on its premium rounds. And so unlike something like the Scorpion G, where if you load premium rounds, you have 1,150 meters a second shell velocity, it can make it quite challenging to snipe at long range without having to give excessive lead. A passing mention should be made to the fact this vehicle carries a huge amount of ammunition, 50 rounds, which is more than enough to take a variety of different ammo types for whatever the situation dictates that you should use. So now on to gun handling. Is it going to be good news for the T-103? Well, it's neither good nor bad. These are by no means terrible stats for a large caliber gun. If they're on a heavy tank, they would be significantly worse, but they're just worse than the Su-130 PM, even though that tank is packing much larger alpha damage. And the vehicle's aim time is significantly worse than the Scorpion G, and it has the worst in-class accuracy between these three premium tanks. One thing that doesn't suck about this vehicle, however, is the gun depression at 8 degrees. That provides you with a lot of flexibility, but considering just how darn tall this tank is, it definitely needs that 8 degrees of gun depression. You can actually struggle to engage short opponents that are directly in front of you, especially if they've got strong upper hulls and turrets. And so if you're in some higher tier medium tanks or heavy tanks, face hugging these things, as long as it doesn't manage to overmatch your roof deck, will be a great way to deal with them. Now on to mobility, and this is a heavy old girl. It's 63 tons, and considering it goes at 40 kilometers an hour forwards, that allows you to really ram whatever's in front of you. I've had some collisions with this tank where I've dealt 300, 400 damage, even to equal tier medium tanks, and when you combine that with 440 alpha damage, you could be shaving off half of their hit points before they manage to get that second shot into you while you're reloading. However, the mobility of this tank, while it's not truly tragic, is by no means good, with a power to weight ratio of just over 14 and a reverse speed and abysmal 12 kilometers an hour, which can really prevent you from getting back around that corner quickly after you've ambushed your opponents. Makes this thing feel really sluggish indeed. And combine this with horrific turret traverse of 15 degrees a second, and unless you're willing to turn the tracks of this vehicle, which doesn't have abysmal tank traverse, you can find it very hard to re-engage tanks that are either trying to flank you, or maybe you want to just sit still, and if you want to choose to use a camo net or binoculars on this tank, you're going to have to deactivate them to keep engaging. This is truly tier 10 super heavy turret traverse, which doesn't quite work on a tier 8 tank destroyer. Next up, let's talk about the armor of this vehicle. Surely such a heavy tank is going to have beast-like armor. Well, yes and no. The hull armor, while on paper it's meant to be 100 and 100 on the front and the side respectively, I think that might be pushing it. Sure, it does have 100 millimeters of armor all down the side, which means that you can side scrape, but as soon as you side scrape in this tank, then they can manage to shoot you in the turret ring here, which kind of defeats defeats the whole purpose of side scraping, right? And the armor on the roof deck of this vehicle being 30 millimeters, this doesn't take artillery shells very well, and with it being such a large target, it's just so juicy for the artillery to engage you, and it's a hard thing to miss. And so really, the only armor that this tank has is on the turret. And sure, the turret armor is pretty good. 230 around here, up to 280, or if you miss and you hit on the outside of the cheeks, then the cylindrical nature of it will obviously mean that you ricochet. But more or less, as soon as somebody dabs that 2 key, or then maybe just a high-tier vehicle, then your turret isn't going to hold up all that much. And combine that with a horrific weak point on the top of the vehicle that's visible from all directions, and the fact that the difference between the gun and the top of the tank is so large, this gigantic forehead of the vehicle. This means that if you want to try and use the 8 degrees of gun depression this tank has to try and poke over a ridgeline, they've had more than enough opportunity to be able to shoot you, and if they've missed your weak point, there's still a chance they're even going to go through the mantlet if they've got a large amount of penetration. Hit points wise, this vehicle has the best in this comparison at 1,250, but with only 100 more than the Scorpion, is that really going to help in the long run? And finally, actually some good news for this vehicle, and that is that it has 380 meters view range. That's absolutely fantastic, and that means that if you have an exceptionally skilled crew, maybe from your Object 268 version 4, that you're definitely going to get away with using coated optics on this tank, and I got up to 481 meters view range, of course with using a premium consumable. And you're going to need that kind of view range, let me tell you, because the camera rating of such a gigantic tank is horrific. Less than 9% camo when moving and 12% when stationary. If I use this crew on my SU-130 PM, I'm packing 23%, nearly 24% camo when I'm moving, and over 36% when I'm stationary. And so all in all, statistically, this vehicle is not looking very competitive. Can we still have some good games? Okay, so here we go. We're rolling out on Serene Coast. I'm going to give you a good matchup first, and then I'm going to follow it up with the worst possible matchmaking. All right, Serene Coast. Where do I like to go on a tank destroyer? Well, there's multiple locations that you could choose. One could be maybe sitting around at the back here and just poaching the enemies that are going to make their way through the west. Alternatively, you can kind of hide around at the south here at the back. But eventually when you do get caught out in this location, it's very ugly indeed. I hate getting caught out over here, especially in a tall tank with poor camera rating. Apart from falling back behind a ridge, and even then you're probably still going to get shot. I just don't think it's really going to work out for me. So what I wanted to do with this vehicle was to play aggressively, try and get on a ridge line and try and trade well with my opponents with, inside a matchup like this, the high alpha damage that I'm going to have. It's just a bit funny talking about high alpha damage on this vehicle. We've just highlighted that it doesn't really have that many capabilities better than, for example, something like the Scorpion or even the SU-130 PM. And they've just got lower alpha damage as well, so is it really a good trader? Well, in these kind of scenarios, yeah, sure. Look, a T-3485M and a Carnarvon Action 10. I pretty much got double the alpha damage that the Carnarvon has and nearly triple what the T-3485M has. So if I can manage to control the engagement and get shots into them and trade effectively for myself, well, it's going to be okay. So I'm going to come around the corner here and I'm just going to plow on into the ARL turret. And my artillery looks like it gives a tiny little splash. Oh, it's an FV304. Well, hopefully the FV304 is going to be able to support me, but unfortunately there's going to be no stunning there to assist me. So put one into the ARL, I'm going to come around the corner and put another one into the turret, finish him off. You can see that this tank with the turret, it does provide it some kind of flexibility around a corner. And, well, it does have some armor. Again, if you expose your hull in this thing, you don't really have any armor. The only armor that you have in this tank is the turret, but for some reason people just weren't really wanting to shoot me in the turret all that much in this tank. So I could have shot the Carnarvon Action 10 there. Maybe I'm going to regret that later. We'll have to find out. But for now, I want to just deal with the tank destroyer at the back, the one that's been caught out with our vision. Remember, with coated optics on this tank, I'm packing like 480 meters view range right now with that 380 base view range. Definitely one of the better things about the vehicle. And if this thing had 350 meters view range, it would probably be one of the worst tanks, I think, at tier 8. But having 380 definitely makes a huge difference to the tank. You can come out and you can play that kind of coated optics brawling heavy tank destroyer role as long as you can hide the hull armor. And this is where you have to get the tank. This will be the vehicle in its environment. If you can get the vehicle in this kind of scenario where you're only exposing your turret over a ridgeline and you're hopefully trading up against your opponents, then you are going to do well. Talk about trading up. Did I just roll for 330? That is a minimum roll. That is 440 minus 25%. That is the lowest possible roll for this gun. And oh well, it doesn't really matter because I get to finish off the Jagdtiger quite quickly afterwards. So I'm not sure what you guys are noticing here, but when you've got this kind of damage per minute that's slightly higher than the SU-130, it's pretty nice to be able to just consistently fire in these 440 alpha damage shots. Definitely has way better DPM than you would have on a Defender, for example. But of course, you don't have the armor of the Defender, right? Or even the hit points. Now, look at the disparity in the shells. We rolled for 330 against the Jagdtiger, and then we roll for 501 against the T-29, which lowers him to a point where I'm able to finish him with a single, well, my second shell there. And up to 3,200 damage in the first 3.5 minutes of this game. Not too bad, right? It's looking like this one's a bit hook, line, and sinker for us. But now this is the awkward scenario, right? I don't have any hull armor. There's no real way for me to advance at the Carnarvon Action 10. I got a good gun, but it's not an incredible gun that's going to be able to harass his turret. And so I'm just feeling incredibly awkward right now about how I can manage to get into this scenario. And he comes around the corner. I'm thinking he's going to shoot me, but he's actually not trying to shoot me. And I kind of hesitated a little bit there. I was trying to cower away from the Carnarvon Action 10, and so I don't manage to get a clean shot into the side of his turret. I tried to shoot the Hummel dies, and then, oh, KV-85, well played, son, as he manages to finish us off. But what I wanted to show from here is that when you are in a nice matchup in this tank, the DPM, the alpha damage, and even the turret armor and the hit points that you have, you do feel like you can play more of a heavy tank role. In a matchup like this, however, we're definitely going to have to be more of the support tank. Now, on Runeberg, in a tank destroyer, where am I thinking about going in a vehicle like this? Well, I can expose my turret, but I can't really expose my hull. I was thinking maybe I could sit around this location, but no, I just feel that considering I've spawned on the north, I want to try and take the fight to the enemy team. I want to locate myself on this ridgeline. I'm going to fire a shell at this Batchat here, and unfortunately, it looks like the post completely absorbs the shell, or maybe the shell dips into that rubble mound and the Batchat manages to get behind it. And I just don't know what these tier 10 heavy tanks and tier 10 medium tanks are doing right now. I guess they're trying to rush into the window, and I was thinking, oh god, oh god, oh god, are these two tier 10 autoloaders? Are they about to eat my tiny little tier 8 tank? I was thinking, okay, well, fine. I'll take 400 damage into a tier 10 vehicle at the start of this game. Not too bad. Alright, so what I want to do when I'm spawning north here on Runeberg is that if you manage to get yourself in a location up like this, you can get good shots through the town. For some unknown reason, Wargaming hasn't made this map symmetrical, and it gives a huge advantage to the team that spawns north if they can manage to hold this location, because it completely denies the town to the southern team, or at least allows you to get a huge amount of damage on your opponents as they decide to try and push across the streets. So in this scenario, I'm just realizing how bloomin' big this tank is and how gigantic the forehead is. Just look, the opponents are probably going to be able to see my weak point over these bushes, right? So that's why I'm not going all the way into the bush. I want to try and stay a little bit behind it because that's going to increase my chance of not getting spotted. Now, if I get spotted in this location, it's probably not going to work out too well for me. And there you go, the 5100 lights me up and I think, oh, better pull back here, right? But I'd love to shoot him first. I nail him through a car. And you can see that the turret armor on this tank actually handles a round from the E50, which was a premium round, and also a round from the 90mm on the UDES very well. And then we trade nicely, putting in another 450 damage into the UDES. But I see that there's a Panzer 7 down in the town there. Oh, Scorpion G. Now, one thing that I would like to mention there is you see the Scorpion actually got hit, or he fired, and so I just had to take a chancy shot. And luckily for me, the snapshot worked out. All right, so I'm clicking my help key here right now because I'm asking my team to try and spot the Panzer 7 for me so I can manage to engage him. Now, I am loading premium rounds now because I want to have that 300 alpha damage, which will allow me to contest the lower plate of the Panzer 7 if he's not angling it. And wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 482 damage to a tank that's 2 tiers higher than you. 2,600 damage in the first 2.5 minutes of this game. But this is really because I'm kind of just getting lucky, I guess, with where my shells are going and also where the opponents have decided to go. But I feel like it's just where you've got to take a tank like this. You got to push it to the front. You got to try and play that supporting role. And these tanks can seem to do, well, this tank can seem to do very well even in a game where it's a one-sided affair, if you play it aggressively, because you've got the flexibility to make the plays on the front. Unfortunately, our shell went low and left there, however, so we're unable to get the a shell into the E50. But we actually managed to block 2 out of 4 rounds there of the 5100, adding another 600 block to our total. And our amount blocked in this game is pretty much the hit points of the vehicle. So the armor definitely does work, but it's just not incredible. You can see where the armor is working, right? Ding off the mantler, ding down there off the turret ring, probably some off the side of the turret as well. But the hull armor, on the other hand, is being turned into Swiss cheese, right? Okay, so an awkward stage of the game here for me. I kind of want to push in, but I'm on such low hit points that I can't afford to take a hit. But I'm probably going to... I just want to pressure the enemy team anyway, because I'm trying to hunt like an experience total. I'm not going to lie, I was trying to get an ace tanker at this point. So I feel like if at least... I know it's not the hardest thing to do to get an ace tanker when nobody's playing the vehicle. I just wanted to test the vehicle and show all of you what its capacity would be, both in good matchups and also in bad matchups. And showing tanks like this in good matchups and bad matchups is very important, because any tank that requires armor, I should really show how it's going to perform both in a good matchup and a bad matchup. Nevertheless, it doesn't look like my armor works very well against tier 10 tank destroyers firing premium rounds. What are you going to do? And so 2 decent rounds here for the T-103, both inside our good matchup, where we got 1,100 base, 3,200 damage. I think I fired 1 premium round, or maybe I didn't actually. 78,000 credits profit. Next on Runeberg, a Confederate medal here. 1,083 experience in a very quick 4-minute round, and 64,000 credits profit, because I did spend a few rounds here to try and penetrate that tier 10 German heavy tank at good distances. And so all in all, what do I think about the T-103? Well, I mean, if you're a decent player and you've got a decent crew and you put it in this tank and you take it to the front, you can do well. And while I felt that I was flexible enough to be able to influence a lot of my battles, I had a bit of a bizarre run of games, because I played 13 in this tank and I won 12 out of 13, but my average damage, it wasn't necessarily very impressive. And so I'm really confused by the T-103, because statistically the tank doesn't look very impressive. But I think if you play this vehicle with coated optics, you have a decent crew, and you pump up your view range to hopefully around about the 460, or if you're using a premium consumable, the 480 mark, the kind of work that you can do on a ridgeline when you've got great penetration and 440 alpha damage, and reasonable gun handling and accuracy, seems to mean that this is a tank destroyer that can kind of play more like a heavy tank. And yeah, we all know how that worked out for vehicles like the Object 268 version 4, right? One of the reasons why that vehicle, and still has the best win ratio, I believe, on any freely available tier 10 tank, is that as soon as you can play a tank destroyer like you would play a heavy tank, the influence that you can have in the battle is substantially more than players who sit at the back and kind of wait for the game to be lost. And so while I'm not highly recommending picking up the T-103, I think you're going to be disappointed by the hull armor. I think you're going to be probably underwhelmed by the alpha damage, the accuracy, and the gun handling of this vehicle. The mobility isn't really going to be anything to write home about, and that reverse speed of 12 kilometers an hour is going to leave you exposing yourself for longer than you would want to, or enable your enemies to be able to flank you easier than you would like. But there is just something weird about this absolute Frankenstein of a tank that, for all of its faults, just seems to still work. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this one, or maybe you just found this review useful. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down, and let me know in the comments what you think about the T-103. Do you think the vehicle looks really good, or do you think the statistics kind of hold the tank back compared to its turreted competition, and you're looking at this tank like a blooming big XP pinata? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.